here's the thing. While you can buy one of my solar system necklaces, I want you to feel just as capable of creating your own if that's what you want to do. So I'm excited to guide you through crafting a celestial necklace that is completely unique to you. Whether you're into space or DIY projects or just want to try something new, let's dive into it together.
First, let's talk materials. I've amassed a lot of jewelry supplies, and that makes it kind of an adventure to sort through and choose combinations for each design that I make, but you definitely don't need all this to get started. You'll just need some beads, a chain of your choice in the kind of metal that you like. Just make sure that the links are big enough for jump rings to be attached to. Something to represent the ring of Saturn, head pins and jump rings or small wire, jewelry or needle nose pliers. I also use this tool called a one-step looper, which helps a ton. It's not necessary, but it can definitely make your job a lot easier. A clasp for closure. I prefer variations of lobster clasp, but there's a ton of different kinds to choose from. Optional is a sun charm or pendant of some kind to complete the look. I'm not going to use one for this necklace, but I'll talk a little bit more about it later on. I like to choose natural stone or glass beads that correspond to the colors of the planets. I also prefer to use beads that relatively correspond to the sizes of the planets. You might choose to include Pluto or not. I get really mixed opinions on the dwarf planets, but Pluto is always going to hold a special place in my heart. If you don't have lots of beads on hand and you go buy some, sometimes you can find strings of mixed beads at craft stores that will have multiple different colors or bunches of the same color or material but in different sizes. Honestly, a more minimal or monochromatic solar system could look super cool. So it's just up to you to look for whatever you want. Buying lots of different natural stone bead strings can definitely add up, so just be thoughtful about your budget. If you prefer not to go to a craft store for any reason, I made an Amazon list of lots of materials that's linked in the description. It has some of the exact tools I bought and used, but so far I always buy beads locally, so just be sure to double check all the reviews on those. I'm going to be working on 3 necklaces at once because it saves me time, and it's fun to mix and match the planets as part of the journey to see what looks best. For my designs, I carefully select beads that match the essence of each planet. You can do the same or get creative with it. Here's a basic guide of what I do for my approximated multicolored solar systems. Mercury, I use purple agate or amethyst, or sometimes tiger's eye. Venus, a yellow or golden stone. Earth, I find a blue-green marbling of some kind to look like the continents and the ocean. Mars, a deep red or orange. Jupiter, a larger swirled orange or brownish bead. Saturn, a paler yellow bead and a tiny ring if you want. Uranus, an icy, or I like to say creamy, blue, tealish color. And then Neptune, a deeper, darker blue. And then because I love Pluto, I'll include a soft white pearl or something mysterious like moonstone or cat's eye. And I like to mix textures and finishes for extra dimension. More planets have rings than we might classically think, so in some designs I add a ring to Neptune and a more substantial ring for Saturn. Really, you can add solar system details forever. You could add moons or the asteroid belt somehow, comets, more dwarf planets. It's all up to you and your creativity, how in depth you want to go with the details of your design. Next, it's also up to you how many layers of chain you want to use. To make it like mine, measure out 2 12.5-inch lengths of chain for either side of the planets, and 1 18-inch length for the upper chain that is the classic choker look. I add 3-inch extenders to the back of my necklaces so that they can fit anyone, but a nice thing about making your own is that you can size it against your neck to get exact measurements, and then you don't have to worry about adding an extender chain, and you can always go back and add one later if you grow. Now you might decide that you want to add some kind of sun charm to the upper necklace layer. I got lucky in finding a bunch of these sun charms that I used in my celestial line, and I like to put these glass prismy beads at the star's center. I considered using the back of a sunflower charm for a sun once. You can even sort of sculpt a sun out of wire if that's what you would like. So totally be creative. I would add it here for a layered look if I were going to use one today, rather than have it be too far above and stab into my neck, but I won't be using that today. Once all your components are ready, now it's time to put each planet bead onto a head pin or wire so that they can be attached. Here's where the one-step looper makes my life so much easier, because manually making all these little loops can be kind of a pain. For most of these you could use wire if you have that on hand instead of loop pins, but it's nice to have a true head pin, at least for the very last planet, for a clean look. If you don't have one though, you could finagle or wrap the wire in some way to make sure that the bead won't slip off, whatever looks and feels best to you. As for Saturn's ring, here I'm just using a large jump ring. It's always a little tricky to wrestle everything into place and get a wire the correct length, but there are other kinds of rings and ways of attaching it, so just use whatever you can find that you think will work best, and always feel free to experiment. Once your planets are each ready, the next step is to bring everything together. Attach each bead to the next with your pliers, just keeping everything in order. You can see here how this design could be converted into a more classic round necklace if that's what you prefer. This one I've made is called Altazimuth. It's a little different and includes the asteroid belt, and it's my best seller. If you want a more spaced out look or a longer chain, or for it to drop down lower, you can add small spacer beads or chain segments between each planet. For this design I call Syzygy. I like to just have Pluto dangling down by itself at the very edge of the solar system. Now take the two matching 12.5 inch chains and attach them both to Mercury at one end. Then, with each of the other ends of those chains, you'll take your jump rings and add one side of the 18-inch chain to each. This will span it across to be the choker part. Then just remember to add a lobster clasp to one of the ends. Now, check that everything is secure, make any last adjustments.
And that's it. With that, you can have your own handcrafted solar system necklace that's completely unique to you. If you love making things like this, let me know in the comments. And if DIY isn't your thing, but you want some celestial jewelry, check out my online shop where I handcraft every piece with love and nerdiness. Either way, I hope you enjoyed creating with me, and until next time, keep exploring. Love you.